It's classified beyond the normal briefing for the president. The president of the United States and the director of the CIA were being denied access. We actually are living in a situation where the extreme secrecy Eisenhower warned us about, the worst of that has come to fruition. And frankly, no one is reporting that, certainly not the mainstream news media. There are sociopaths who are in super secret projects that don't want us to have it. I'm working now to try to bring this information, and more equally importantly, the technologies that are behind these spacecraft and things that are being reported on CNN now, because what the public isn't being told is that we have in fact figured out how those objects operate, and that would give us an entirely new and advanced civilization where we would not need fossil fuels, oil or gas or coal or nuclear power. So it's a very big story. Most people think the secrecy around this is because the government has just been incompetent. That's not true. That narrative is a false narrative. The true narrative is that, I will quote from a top secret memo released during the past few decades, but it was dated 1951. And it stated that the subject was the most classified matter in the US government, exceeding the classification of the development of the hydrogen bomb. I'm quoting. So a lot of people think this is about aliens. I said, no, it's not about ETs. It's about humans, and how are humans going to get out of the conundrum we're in, which is a very serious problem, and move forward as a civilization instead of sliding backwards. The public thinks that, you know, God is in heaven and everything is in orbit and everything is, we actually are living in a situation where the extreme secrecy Eisenhower warned us about, the worst of that has come to fruition. And frankly, no one is reporting that, certainly not the mainstream news media. This is not just the United States, by the way. The same situation exists in Great Britain, Australia. I've met with ministers of defense in most of the Five Eyes countries, which are, of course, you know, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Great Britain, US. I think this is the part of the story that people have a hard time, in a sense, getting their minds around, because we all grew up with our history lessons and our civics lessons, and the president is the commander in chief and blah, blah, blah. In reality, the emperor has no clothes, and there are classified projects that go on, unfortunately, that are not supervised by the president or the Congress. And actually, the CIA director's wife, who at the time was the chief operating officer of the National Academy of Sciences, said to me during our 2 or 3 hour meeting with the CIA director, she turned to me, she said, how are these civilizations communicating across the vastness of interstellar space? Because the speed of light is too slow. And for people who aren't scientists on your viewership, let me explain. At the speed of light, to go 1% of the way across our own galaxy, the Milky Way, would take, which is 1,000 light years, which is the distance light goes at 186,000 miles every second for a year. That's 1 light year. 1,000 light years is 1% of the way across our galaxy, which is 1 galaxy amongst trillions. But at the speed of light, for you to even communicate and say, hey, how are you doing? And to answer back, that would be the time since the birth of Christ, 2,000 years, for that transmission to happen with what you and I are using right now on electromagnetic signals. So we knew as scientists, and that there had to be something else that these civilizations were using. And what we discovered was that they have very sophisticated electronics. And this is, of course, what Elon Musk at Neuralink, he has a company called Neuralink, is working on, that interface with directed thought. Now, this is probably where I've lost half your audience. And they're going, what? What we had discovered is that, in fact, these civilizations that are from various star systems have technologies that Elon Musk could only dream about. In other words, they very accurately transmit and send and receive directed quanta of thought instead of an electromagnetic signal per se, through what's called field consciousness. And the consciousness field is, I mean, it sounds very Buddhist or Vedic, but the consciousness field is actually not bound by space or time. And because of that, there's no limit on the speed of it. It's instantaneous because of what's called non-locality in physics. Is a bit obtuse and technical to get into probably here, but what non-locality means is that it's not based in the speed, the linear speed of light or the linear speed of sound or what have you. It's instantaneous because of the nature of conscious field, the field of consciousness. This is, to me, the most interesting stuff, because this whole science of consciousness is actually the big science for the next 1,000 years, but we have to catch up to the last 70 to 100 years of energy and propulsion technologies that have been hidden away so we don't destroy the biosphere. Why are we still using jet engines from the 30s, 40s, 50s, or rockets from the 40s? I'm saying because the alternative would completely terminate the petrodollar system and oil and gas and coal and nuclear power and public utilities. All of it is redundant, completely unnecessary. Tesla actually had a prototype car that was pulling energy out of the environment, and he didn't really understand what that was. We do now. It's called zero-point energy or quantum vacuum energy. But basically, just for people who are non-scientific, if you visualize a coffee cup, the amount of space inside that cup has enough energy to boil off all the oceans of the planet in its potential. And it's called the zero-point energy field. It's been quantified. It was in academic papers in the 50s, so-called Professor Casimir effect. But Tesla stumbled across this way back, early 20s, I believe, maybe before. But JP Morgan said, look, if we can't put a meter on it, we don't want it. So Tesla died a very bitter man. I always joke that Elon Musk doesn't have a Tesla that he's manufacturing. He has a Musk. And the reason I say that, sort of jokingly, is that a true Tesla would never have to be plugged into the grid. It would be pulling energy out of this state of energy that's around us through very high voltage systems. They're called VHV, very high voltage systems that create an opening into that energy field. And Tesla did enough experimentation with these sort of very high voltage systems at certain resonant frequencies, cycles per second, hertz, that he broke into that area of science, but no one wanted it to come out. Now, fast forward 100 years later, we're still burning gasoline in engines and rocket fuel and jets. And that's a tragedy for the human race, but it's a tragedy for the planet, and it's a tragedy for our children and my 9 grandchildren. So my concern is, the future. The past is the past, but we have to figure out how to catch up sort of back to the future. It's like that cartoon show, the Jetsons, when they showed people flying around in these cars. When that cartoon was made, those technologies were already developed. They're not going to say, A, we know what these are. B, we know where they come from. C, we figured out how they work. Let me give you a date that's going to probably curl your toes. October 1954. That was the date we mastered gravity control. Now, what do I mean by gravity control? What I mean by gravity control are high voltage systems that cause an object to what looks like levitate or move the way that vehicle that you saw in that video released by the Pentagon this week. And they confirmed, yes, this is real footage. And they released 3 different videos. What they didn't say, because the people releasing it don't know this, because of the compartmentalization, is that there is an unacknowledged compartmented program that began studying this in the 40s and 50s, and by 1954 had figured out how those things operate.
Let us know if there's aliens, because this is the only thing I really want to know. I want to know what's going on. Would you ever open up Roswell and let us know what's really going on?
The President of the United States, since Eisenhower, has not been read into, which is a military term for briefed, on what are called unacknowledged special access projects.
There are millions and millions of people that want to go there, that want to see it. I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting.
I don't believe he has particularly more information than some of the others. Like Ronald Reagan had quite a bit of information on the extraterrestrial and UFO subject, but the information was cherry-picked.
With a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
So you're saying you may declassify?
Oh.
You'll take it?
Well, I'll have to think about that one.
So I know what is happening with the current president is that the people around him are ones that are selected to provide a certain type of information. And it is usually cherry-picked intelligence so that the president will respond to the subject the way they want them to, these classified operatives. So people have to understand the nature of an unacknowledged special access project. And most people would assume, it'd be fair to say, that because you're the President of the United States, you have an all-access pass to all these compartmented operations that are very classified, but they do not. And that is one of the urban myths, is that the president knows everything or can find out about everything. What I have found is that depending on the presidency, and I briefed and put a briefing together for every president since Bill Clinton, and briefed personally his CIA director. And what I found is, for example, when Bill Clinton inquired about this subject, he was denied any information. His CIA director was tasked with looking into it. He was denied information. So I was invited to come up to Washington, even though I'm an emergency doctor, but I had collected a large archive on this issue and briefed the director of the CIA. And that was when I discovered that the nature of the secrecy is so compartmented that, some people say, well, it's above top secret. Well, there is no classification above top secret. What it is the compartment you're in. And the ones that are special access projects are very restricted. And the ones that are unacknowledged special access projects are off the books, and only the people in that sealed compartment know about what they're doing. And that is how it's structured. And that architecture structure evolved from the 50s forward. And so no president since Eisenhower has had full access to these projects, which is, of course, illegal and unconstitutional, which is why my group, SeriousDisclosure.com, we're gathering together people to change that. But I think the current president has access to a point. But he anyone like that is in a bubble. So, when you enter the White House, say you're a businessman or a peanut farmer like Jimmy Carter or whatever, you get into the White House and the people that are surrounding in the national security apparatus, most of them don't know about this issue. The ones that are appointed and come and go every few years. But there's a permanent bureaucracy, a few of whom would be read into or briefed on the subject. But those people will only tell the president what they think the president will respond to in a favorable way for them, strategically. For example, there's been all this information coming out recently about UFOs being chased by our Navy pilots off the coast of California, et cetera. It's all been on CNN, New York Times. Those objects are most likely Lockheed Martin top secret Skunk Works object.
A close encounter spotted by a U.S. Air Force pilot off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida.
There's a new insider who's just come forward, and he's been saying that he was told that the Tic Tac UFOs were these hybrid craft that were capable of traveling through the ocean at 500 miles an hour and in the air at 24,000 miles an hour, and escaping Earth's velocity if they needed to. And that these were craft that were actually being made for the US Air Force. So these were Air Force Secret Space Program vehicles being produced at this secretive facility in Palmdale, California called Plant 42, which has long been known to be a major production site for highly classified craft that the Air Force has been having various contractors work on and assemble for them. Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works actually relocated from Burbank, California to this facility, Plant 42, up in Palmdale. So Plant 42 is where you actually have these Tic Tac craft actually being produced for the US Air Force.
That was one of the most amazing things to us, or at least to me, was that these objects would be out there all day, and the speeds that they're exhibiting, as well as the flight characteristics. There's no platform or really an energy source that I'm aware of that could allow something to stay in the air as long as these objects were. According
to this whistleblower, he's being encouraged to come forward to let the public know that these craft are secret Air Force craft.
Space. Gonna be a lot of things happening in space. Because space is the world's newest warfighting domain. Amid grave threats to our national security, American superiority in space is absolutely vital.
Which has just been set up early 2020. Space Force has had its logo approved. It has its new commander. It's got its chief enlisted officer approved, and they're working out the details of personnel requirements, uniforms, and so forth. So that's all being set up.
Cape Canaveral Air Force Station will soon officially get a new name. It will be called Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. Patrick Air Force Base will also get the new Space Force moniker. It's to reflect the new Space Force branch of the military.
So that's all being set up. But in the meantime, we have the craft, some of the craft, like these Tic Tac craft, which are about 46 feet long, that are shaped like a Tic Tac, so they're cylindrical, that these are going to be one of the vehicles that are eventually going to be released, and basically the Air Force or Space Force is going to make it known that this is part of their apparatus or part of their arsenal for outer space operations.
Everybody's asking the biggest question in the world. Are we alone?
That is strange. That is really weird.
Do we really need the government to tell us?
I've never seen that. That's all right now. Good.
For thousands of years, and to present day, there's evidence of extraterrestrial craft that we don't know of.
Looks like 30 seconds ago.
There's someone Papa Golf negative.
A UFO. Yeah. It's murder tonight.
They're not only Navy pilots that witness the phenomenon. Regular people, including NASA themselves, capture anomalies that can't be explained. Through the eyewitness testimony and video evidence to back it up, it proves that there's something bizarre happening in the skies.
Sober military pilots saying something that we can't explain is happening.
That is correct. You're talking about individuals who have very high security clearances. They are trained observers.
NASA themselves capture things in space with the ISS that they still can't explain to this day.
Zero up towards about 12,000 feet and then accelerate in less than 2 seconds and disappear is something I had never seen in my life.
There is a difference between UFO technology from another world and reverse engineered technology that a government faction uses to keep secrets from the military, such as the Navy. The whole point of the government military system is to hold a secret, as they did with the stealth bomber for 40 years. Is this the new technology that they're about to reveal to the public?
The people who would be, say, briefing the president, or the Senator Marco Rubio, who made the comment, we don't know what these are. Well, we do want to know what they are. But the people who are surrounding that level of our politicians and government are not told the full story. And that's why our group is trying to correct that. We're trying to create a different dynamic and provide accurate information and also analysis. Why is it secret? Who's keeping it secret? Where is it kept secret?
The question becomes, who is piloting these secret spacecraft? Could they be aliens from another world? Or could they be humans piloting these exotic craft?
We must be forward-looking in our research and development to anticipate and achieve the unimagined weapons of the future.